This podcast is for singers who have music in their soul and want to be in the spotlight. We are INVICTA Vox Radio.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of INVICTA Vox Radio. As always, we are your hosts, Mike and
Angie Lee.
And today we're going to be talking about something that's kind of an interesting topic for me, and it's something that I forget often, and I actually have to remind myself of quite a bit. And that is that action creates motivation, and it's not the other way around. And I know that this idea, this concept actually floats around there quite a bit in like the self-development space. If you watch motivational videos, it's like, get out there and take action. But to kind of bring it into a little more practical sense, lately, I would say over the past couple of weeks, I've kind of felt just low energy, low juice, you know, and I've been waiting like, oh my gosh, what's going to light the passion in my life? What's going to get me feeling like, hey, I want to get up each day. Like I want to be motivated. Like I want to get after it and just feel that like passion and fire for whatever it is I'm doing. Right. And then I just, you know, went through this process of like meditation and all these things. And then it was like, okay, instead of waiting or instead of feeling like this inspiration, like this motivation, this fire and passion is going to come from somewhere else, I need to create it. Right? So it's almost like the whole process of creating a fire by rubbing sticks together and by creating action, creating that friction, and through that friction, through that motion and action, it creates the fire.
Creates the spark.
Right? So then it's like, okay, I just got to get up instead of letting myself sleep in. Because then I'm sending myself this signal each day as I shut off my alarm that, hey, it's okay. We're going to take inaction and take comfort over movement. Right. And so do you think that sleeping in and taking this time for yourself will help you like have more energy and more fire? And what I've actually found is most of the time it does the opposite for me. Now, if you're completely gassed and out of energy, last time or a couple times ago, we talked about fatigue and how that'll drain you. But most of the time, it's that action that starts to give you that energy, that passion. And once you have that, then you create results, right? So that action creates results. The results fuel the action, and it's this cycle that gets going.
Yeah. What do you usually call that cycle?
I think we've called it the desire cycle in the past.
Yeah, the desire
right?
cycle. Yeah.
Like it's and it's got to start from somewhere, right? It's like that train, like a train when you watch it and the wheels start chugging, but it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But you have to start that motion of trying to build momentum. Yeah. And sometimes it's just doing it, but you have to force that action to get that momentum started. It's not going to come from all of a sudden someday you're just feeling on fire. And so you do those things.
Yeah, no, at some point you just have to jump in.
Yeah. And
it's funny because if you look at our Instagram, we have a couple different memes. Like one of them's like leap and one of them is move. And it's because of this reason, everyone thinks that the magic thing is going to come around and make them have the desire to get their results. And that's just not the case. It's funny because getting results is what fuels your desire to do more. And in order to get those results, it has to start with action. And so it's just taking that first step and really pushing and then not stopping once you're going, because once you start the momentum, and those first steps are always the hardest, right? Because you don't have anything compounding to help you push it forward faster. And so you have to really put a lot more energy into it. But once that train gets going and those wheels aren't just like sliding out on the track anymore, it's chugging and it's moving and it's going. It builds more and more momentum as it goes. And what happens in our lives is that as we get that engine started and as we use that action to really motivate us, then we actually achieve something. We get a result. And then it empowers us to keep moving even more. And so it's just continually taking action, because even after you get the momentum going and you get some results because you built momentum for those results, if you stop moving, you lose momentum, you lose results, you lose desire. And so the desire cycle all depends on you taking that first step and actually moving and actually taking action in something. and then continuing to do that because they just feed into each other. Action equals results, results equal action. And it just goes back and forth and back and forth. And that motivation just kind of sits in the middle all the time.
Yeah. And this concept of momentum is something that I bring up quite a bit with
with
the people in our challenge groups, especially where it's like, oh, I didn't practice all that much. I only got in 10 minutes today. And it's like, it's okay. We're at least maintaining momentum. Yeah. At some point, you just don't want to stop because it takes so much more energy
to get it going
get going again. Where if you're in momentum and you just keep that action going, then the next day, if you've done 10 minutes one day and the next day you have a little more time, a little more space to do more, then you'll open it up and do a little more. But it's all about just making sure that you keep that momentum going once you have it up. The other really important part of this that I've found too is sometimes you lose sight of what the action is for.
Right.
And so then after a while, it's like, well, why am I doing this? Like what the hell is this for? You know what I mean?
Why am I working so hard?
And because you kind of lose sight at what's going on. So again, I use this mountain climbing analogy all the time because we hike quite a bit, and it's really easy to see this, right? Like sometimes you're hiking, and if you don't have an idea of where the destination is that you're trying to go, then it just feels like you're meandering on some meaningless path.
Well, yeah, and actually, if you don't know how far away it is or you don't know where you're trying to get to, it feels like it's never ending, and it actually feels like it takes way longer than it actually does because you're just like, oh, this is painful, it's hard. We're going up another one. You go around a corner and you're like, oh, here's another steep path. Okay, I think we're almost there. And it's like, nope, we still got a quarter mile to go. It's like, where are we even trying to get to? And I think it's a lake somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
And unless you have seen a map, unless you have, you like actually understand how much distance it is to go 3 miles or 5 miles or whatever that is. And unless you've really calculated down what you think you're trying to achieve, that hike feels like it goes on forever. And it really is more of a mental game than anything at that point because you defeat yourself mentally because you don't actually see what you're trying to achieve. You just see the next hill. And it just feels like so much work and it's so difficult. And because you're in that mode too of this is hard and this is difficult, you also don't stop to smell the roses. You don't enjoy the journey. You don't see the beautiful sights on your way up.
Right.
Because all you're doing is looking at the path going, oh my gosh, how much longer is this going to take me? And where am I even trying to get to? And so, yeah, like the destination is massive and knowing, you know, kind of having a plan, knowing it's a loose plan. Maybe you meander off a different path and come back to it again, but you're still trying to get there. And then also enjoying the journey on the way there. Because if you're not enjoying the hike, what's the point? I mean, it's cool if you get to the lake, but then wasn't there anything in between with all of that work?
Right. And that's one thing that I think frustrates people a lot too is they have the end goal in mind, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to zoom out every once in a while and remind yourself of that end goal. Like, where are you trying to go? What's the top of the mountain? What's the lake that you're trying to go to? But at the same time, if you stay totally focused on that all the time, then you're just going to get discouraged and be like, oh man, am I never going to be there?
Yeah. Like another big hill. Here we go again.
But
More rocks.
So it's this idea of remembering what you're like working towards and then zooming back into what you're actually just doing right now, the daily actions, and just having the faith and the belief that the steps you're taking are going to get you there eventually, and then just attacking it and having fun with it and just getting back into that desire cycle, into letting that action fuel you. But the only way you take that action is if you know where you're going, but then you zoom in and you look back down at your feet and you go, okay, the next step I got to take, I got to walk up this rocky section.
Yeah.
This is going to be a little bit painful. It's going to be a little bit tough, but I'm just going to muscle through it and then be proud of myself for achieving it after I get done.
Yeah, I think so. So we talk about this desire cycle. So it's like action gives you motivation because then you achieve a result, and by achieving the result, it feeds you back into more action, and it kind of feeds on itself. And motivation is just kind of circular the whole time. But I just want to point out again, the motivation comes from achieving, because that's always a huge motivation builder. But it fades quickly, because if you're just getting motivation from achieving something and then you're back in the grind to try to build back up to that again, it's not enough. You have to have something that's going to motivate you and make you feel good on a daily basis. And that's why we always talk about enjoying the journey. Because if you're not actually enjoying what you're doing, even sometimes when the grind is harder, this slope is going to be rockier, it's going to be steeper, but this is the best part of the trail because there's wildflowers, right? So it's like, are you just looking at the rocks or are you looking at the wildflowers? And so it's this perspective of really appreciating every step of the journey and understanding that it's all necessary, but enjoying it on the way. Because if you're not enjoying it, then those little rewards of achieving results and getting to the next benchmark are not going to be enough to fuel you to keep going up the mountain. And so make sure that you're really taking note of that and really looking out into the different planes of where you're at and saying, okay, this is a really cool part of my life because of this. You know, you can even think of it as a life cycle. It's interesting when you're raising kids, because you're like, in baby phase is super, super hard. It's like exhausting, right?
Yeah.
But then once they're into being toddlers and older children, it's like, oh man, I'm never going to hold my baby again. And so even though that part of the life is hard, we still enjoy it as much as we possibly can for those moments that we will never have again. And so if you can kind of keep that mentality as you're going and taking these steps, especially on the legs that are harder, then it's going to motivate you even more and feed into that desire cycle even more, because you're enjoying it every day and not just when you're celebrating the victories.
Yeah. And I think bringing that back into like a comparison with music, right? There's this initial phase that most people get into when it's like really exciting to start singing or to start playing an instrument. And you have this section of growth where you grow super fast in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. It's like somewhat frustrating because you're kind of fumbling through it, but it's like fun because you're picking up new pieces and
you see growth fast because you're coming from nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's like some coolness about that, but you know you're not good yet. So there's some frustration. Then I think the next phase is one of the hardest phases, because then you're still not good
where you want to
at
be.
What you do, right? Like you're getting better, but you know you're not great yet.
But the changes are more incremental.
Right. And so you have to put in so much more work to get there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, it's that hard season. It's the thing that can be somewhat frustrating, in the place where a lot of people give up.
Yeah. In the middle.
In the middle.
In the middle.
And so this is where just keep pushing through, because eventually it's going to click. But again, it always comes down to, you're not going to feel motivated to put in that extra work, because it's going to be hard to see that improvement. So it's going to be like, man, am I putting in all this work for nothing? But eventually you break through. Eventually it clicks in your mind. Eventually you get the coordination down. And it just takes a little more time. And then there's this idea that things progress linearly, and they don't. Really, it's like a plateau and a jump, a plateau and a jump. And so you just have to fight through that plateau, hang in there long enough, keep your momentum going until you can make that jump. And then you start to catch that glimpse again, that the trail that you're on is actually leading you to where you want to go.
Yeah, and it's looking for those little wins to fuel you along the way.
Yeah. And in the meantime, just enjoy where you're at as much as you can.
Enjoy the process.
It's frustrating, but have fun with it at the same time. Like, look for those little challenges, the places that you struggle. You have to be able to see minor improvements at that point, because that's what kind of keeps your mind in the game.
Right. Well, and I think tracking is the game for that too, to be able to actually see results. Because you're not going to have those big, huge rocket ship moments where you skyrocket and get to the next plateau. They're not going to happen every single day. And that's where the frustration comes with the reps. And that's why here at the studio, we track everything. We track daily practice. We track visualization to see if you're visualizing your performance and doing all that. We're documenting at every single lesson, everything we're working on. We always have targets that we're working towards in the short term and the long term. And we are constantly shooting videos of before and after so that you can see your progress in like an 8-week period. And so those little things are so important, because as you're growing, you get used to your own body so quickly that you don't realize how far you've come, because those incremental changes are so gradual. You just don't get it. You don't see it. And so if you can document your journey or track your journey as much as possible, you will be able to see those little wins way, way better. And you're going to see them, the more gradual things become very big. And so, because you're just basically putting a magnifying glass on it and really shining a spotlight on all the little things you're doing. And so we found that that's really powerful and really motivating for people in the short term, and to help you stay grounded and present and really understanding what you're working towards. So having those short-term targets and then actually tracking what you're doing to get there, because then you can see very clearly if you're getting the results you want or not.
Yeah. And I think that just going back to that whole idea of like zooming out or looking at the big picture, look at where you're trying to go, right? To like just keep yourself in the game of ultimately what you're trying to achieve. But you can see the progress that you're making, one, by looking down at your feet, right? Looking at that next step, and then you'll know, hey, I did cross that rocky part, or hey, I have been moving this whole time. And then taking those little moments to look back and enjoy. And
appreciate how
and
far
go,
you come.
oh man, I did, right? Yeah. And that's where tracking helps, right? It helps you actually look back to go, okay, I am improving. Like, this isn't just made up and in my mind. But it's just this continual progression of look forward, look down at where you're at, look back.
Yep.
And it's like, stay in the game, stay in momentum, and keep moving.
And just build that desire constantly by staying in action mode and achieving results, and they'll feed into each other to continue that motivation to keep moving forward. Yep.
So with that, I think the question of the day is, where in your life right now, so if you're on YouTube, again, go to the comment section. If not, go to your journal and bust out a pen. But where is it in your life? So what action, what activity, what are you trying to achieve that you're waiting for motivation, or you're waiting for fire to go and do it, rather than just jumping in and getting after it and lighting that fire through action? Yep.
And write it down, declare. Figure it out. And what can you do once you see the action that you're holding back on? What can you do to get that started?
Yeah. What's the next step? All right, guys. As always, if you found this episode enjoyable, helpful, likable, huggable, squeezable,
like, subscribe, and share. And let's get the word out to more and more artists every day.
And until next time,
peace.
Peace.